You know what? Let's first start learning the Chumash. Let's learn the Chumash. Vayakhel Moshe is called Adas Bnei Yisrael. Moshe assembled the entire congregation of Bnei Yisrael. Vayemer Aleim, he said to them, Eila Advorim, these are the words that Shirtzil Hashem Lasos. That the Eibush to command to do so. Sheish Hashem Dasam Malocha, B'Mashvi Yelachem Kodesh Habashabosam Hashem Kol Yisrael Malocha Yomatz. Work may be done in 6 days, and the 7th day must be holy. He told them that they have to keep Shabbos. Then the Moshe continues. These are the words that Eibush said. That they should collect among yourselves a trum offering to the Eibush. Every man should give from the donation of his heart. Generously, they should give an offering of Zov, Kesev, Nechosha, gold, silver, and copper, Tchelas, V'gomet, Lashon, Shesh, V'izim, V'yidis, Elam, Adamim, V'yidis, Tchoshem, V'atzei, Shittim. These are all these 15 items. Shem al Amor, V'samal of Shem al Mitchell, Avne Shem, Amalun, Leifid al Choshem, B'cholcham, Levi, Ove, V'asu, Tzkol Shetziv Hashem. All those that have wisdom should come forward to work. Ves HaMishkan, Ves HaOlev, Ves Mechseyo, Ves Krosov, Ves Krosha, Ves Bricha, Ves Hamuda, Ves Adonov. The Mishkan, the covers, the claps, the planks, the bars, the pillars, the sockets, Ves HaOrim, Ves Bada, Ves HaKapoiris, Ves Parechas HaMosach. The ark, the poles, the cover, the partition screen, Ves HaShulchan, Ves Bada, the table, the poles, Ves Kol Keilah, look in the bottom of the page. It's on the same page. Ves Lechem Aponim, Ves Manoiras Amor, Ves Kelev, Ves Nerseh, Ves Shem Amor, Ves Mizbachaktoiris, Ves Bada, Ves Shem Lamishcha, Ves Ktoiris Asamim, Ves Mosach HaPesach, Lefesach HaMishkan, Eis Mizbachalo, Ves Michbar Nachosh Shaloi, Ves Bada, Ves Kol Keilah, Ves Kir, Ves Kan, Eis Kal Echotze, Eis Amud, Ves Adonev, Eis Mosach Shar Echotze. Going through all the items, the basic items that we need to have in the Mishkan, Yistus HaMishkan, Yistus HaChosas Mesreim, the stakes of the Mishkan, and of the entire courtyard, the Bigdei Asirot L'Sharos B'Kodesh, the special clothing, as Bigdei HaKodesh L'Arna HaKoyim, as Bigdei Vonav L'Chayin, Vayetzu Kol Adas B'nei Yisrael Malifnei Moshe, and the entire congregation of Bnei Yisrael departed from the presence of Moshe. So Moshe gathered all the Jews. He told them in short, because we have 2 parshos, where the Eibush tells Truma and Tetzav at great length how to build the Mishkan and how to construct the clothing. And then in Vayakhel Pekudah, Moshe relates it at great length, exactly how to make every item in the Mishkan and how to make the clothing. But here is sort of an introduction. He calls all the people. He says, listen, we need to gather gold, silver, and copper. We need to gather wood. We need to gather string, rope, all the items that they need. And he tells them in short everything they will need to build. And Vayetzu Kol Adas Yisrael Malifnei Moshe. They all went out, and it says further that they came back and they brought so much that Moshe had to come out first and last time in history that there was a fundraiser, and then they came out, hear ye, stop. We have too much contributions are coming in. Stop. Okay.
All that he said now was never said before?
No, this is the first time it was said to the Jewish people. And look at the first Rashi. When did this gathering happen? So Rashi says, Vayakhel Moshe, and Moshe assembled. When did this assembly happen? L'mocharas Yom HaKippurim. It happened on the following day, the day following Yom Kippur. Ksheyored min nahor, when he came down from the mountain. He came down from the mountain, and the next day he spoke to them.
The second time he came down from the mountain, or the first?
This is the 3rd time he came down. There was 40 days. He came down on Shivos B'Tammuz. He saw that they sinned with the egel, he broke the luchas. He went up another 40 times. He asked Hashem for forgiveness, and then he went up a 3rd time. Machof Tes Av. He went out, and on Yom Kippur, the Eibush said, "Salachti kedvorecha," I forgive and our sages say that just like the first 40 days was berotzen, was pleasure and with simcha, the last 40 days was pleasure and with simcha, the middle 40 days Hashem was upset at the Jewish people, and the climax was on the 40th day, the third time, when the Eibusha said, Solachti kedvarecha, I forgive as you requested. That's when he came down from the mountain with the second set of tablets, and that was on Yom Kippur. Next day, he gathered all the people and told them about how to build a Mishkan.
But only the first time when he came down and he broke the luchot, he said, Shevet Levi, who is coming, who is from Hashem,
That
come
was
and kill your brother. It was the first time, right?
That was the first time, yeah. That was on Shivas B'Tammuz.
Okay.
This gathering was the day after Yom Kippur. And the word Vayakhel Moshe, grammatically, doesn't mean Vayikohel Moshe. Vayakhel means that as if he convinced them to come on their own. What is the Huloshin he feel? He caused them to come. She'eni oisef anoshim beyadayim. For one does not assemble people literally with one's hands. Elahim ne'esofim. But rather they are caused to be assembled al pidibura in the means of his saying so. And that's why the Targum says va'achnish, the correct version of the Unkel says va'achnish, he caused them to assemble.
And they said they all heard his voice.
But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi is saying grammatically, there's in Hebrew, there is poyal, pa'ula, nifal, every word. How do you use the word? And when you say with a patach, Vayakhel, it's as if it's hifil, not vayikal, with a chirik. With Vayakhel means as if hifil, as if he did something to stimulate that they should come on their own. So Rashi says that's not a problem, because whenever you gather people, you don't schlep them by their hands, you don't schlep them by their jackets, you call them and they come. So it's as if you induce them to come on their own. Okay.
What the Targum says, Veiknis?
V'ichnish.
This in the Megillah, Lech kenos et kol hayodim. Kenos, ichnis.
Kenois is the opposite. And grammatically, kenois means you should be machnes. Vayakhel means that's the opposite. Vayakhel means hifil. Kenois means poal. You go gather them.
It's an action verb.
On the contrary, the kenois is called you as a question. It's different than vayakhel.
So
but Rashi explains.
Why the Targum say ichnis?
Because you want to explain what is it? Why is it this lashon vayakhel? Vayakhel means that he made them gather. He
caused them to gather.
Right, he caused them to gather. So Rashi explains, because you don't grab people by their hands. You go out on the loudspeakers and you ask people to come. So that's why Vayakhel is grammatically correct.
Did they get a feeling? Did people get a feeling?
Could you imagine? This is the day after Yom Kippur. This must have been a really special and exciting day.
It has to be like, magnetism.
Right.
Major.
Special third time.
All the commentaries say, how does Rashi know that this Vayakhel Moshe happened the day after Yom Kippur? How does he know? So the Maral Prague and the Mizrahi and all the commentaries say that it's simple logic. Zirizim Magdim el mitzvahs. You want to do a mitzvah right away. Why would he delay? The Eibishter told him about this exciting thing that he's atoned the Jewish people. And how do the Jewish people know that their atonement was accepted? That because the Eibishter said to build the Mishkan, and he will show them his love. So therefore, why would he wait? Why would he wait till after Sukkot? He told them right away. Okay. So the two very big questions that comes to mind immediately is, number one, Rashi doesn't usually give information if the pasuk doesn't have a problem. If there's no problem in the pasuk, Rashi doesn't give extra information. If there's a problem, Rashi comes to answer. What's the problem in the pasuk Rashi is trying to address? And if it's so simple that Ziriza Magdim el mitzvahs, so Rashi doesn't have to say that, so you can guess on your own. But the main question is the opposite. If it's true that Ziriza Magdim el mitzvahs, you have to do it quickly, so why did he wait till the day after Yom Kippur? Why didn't he do it on Yom Kippur? Why didn't he do it on Yom Kippur? So let's think for a moment. He came down the mountain on Yom Kippur, right? So what time did he come? So we know that he was on the mountain 40 days, 40 days, and 40 days. What happened the first time of 40 days? The Jews made a mistake. He said he's coming after 40 days. So, Boshesh v'lo higia, says the Gemara. Rashi brings it. He said, I'm coming on the 40th day at 6 hours in the day. It means wait to see the sun come up. Wait for the sun to be on top of your head. 6 hours in the day. You're going to see me here. I'm going to land. Boshesh, I'm going to land. They made a mistake. They counted the first day as one of the days, but that wasn't counted because that wasn't a complete day. So so they made a mistake. It really was the 39th day, and they thought it was the 40th day. And then they said, we don't know what happened to him. And we have to say, the Eid of Rav got mixed in, and they said, we need to make a deity. And
the actual minute.
They count them off by a day. But the bottom line is that Boshesh Moshe, they came for 6. So it would stand to reason that the second 40 and the third 40 was similar. Moshe was there for complete 40 days, and he came down, Boshesh, he came down 6 hours in the day. Not only that, there's other reasons to think that he didn't come the last minute, as we'll talk about this a little later. The whole parshos Yisroi happened on Yom Kippur and the day after Yom Kippur. It says that they made oilus, zvochim, and vahim mochris was the next day, and Yisroi saw that Moshe standing and teaching the Jewish people from morning to night, and he said, "This is loy tova, this is not novel dibel gam ata gam om." It's crazy. You're going to stand and teach yourself 600,000 people. You have to make a hierarchy. You have to make sarei alofim, sarei meis, sarei chamishim, sarei asaris. You got to make an organization here. Okay, and then the Eibishter agreed. So what was Machris? Machris was the day after Yom Kippur. What was the day that they sat and they had a feast? And it was on Yom Kippur, right? So Yom Kippur, he must have come down on the mountain. There was still time to say Shalom Aleichem to his father-in-law, to gather all the people, to build a Mizbeach, to bring a oila, to bring a shlomim, to sit down and have a feast. So obviously he came off the mountain, and there was still time in the day. So if there was still time in the day, if, like the Maral says, and the Mizrahi say, and all the commentaries say, that Rashi is saying simple logic. If God told him a special mitzvah to build a mishkan, he told him right away. So you come down the mountain, and you're holding the tablets, and the people say, "No, forgive the sin." We'll talk tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow. Why? Why wouldn't? If it is a makdim l'mitzvah, you should do it today. You should do it today. You should do it today. So one might say that that it couldn't be on Yom Kippur. Why? Because the next Rashi says that he told them first about the laws of Shabbos to teach them. He first told them about the commandment of Shabbos, so they should know that the building of the mission does not push away the keeping of Shabbos. You have to keep Shabbos. So if he spoke to them on Yom Kippur, why wouldn't he tell them the laws of Yom Kippur? If he spoke to them on Yom Kippur, he should first tell them the laws of Yom Kippur. So the Rebbe says that's not an argument. Why is that not an argument? A very logical thing. So all the commentaries really ask, how could Yisro came on Yom Kippur, and Moshe goes and greets him, and he makes a oilos, vochim, and they eating on Yom Kippur? The first Yom Kippur, what was that, reform, a conservative temple? Moshe Rabbeinu, the first Yom Kippur, and he's serving lamb chops? So the Ramban asks it, and the commentaries ask it. The Rebbe said, therefore they want to say that everything is off by a day. The Rebbe says that no, it's very simple and logical. Think about it for a moment. Moshe, in the Yom Kippur in the morning, the Eibusha says, Salachti kidvarecha, I forgive you. Because of that, from that day until forever, this day has been set as Kate Slicha Mechila. This is the day of atonement forever and ever for the Jewish people. Okay.
That's for next year or for
like Rashi said, that Lakach, Hukva, Lemechila, Uleslicha, Lekapora, from then on, this day is set for a day of Slicha. Now, the question is like this. That year itself, was that year have the holiness of Yom Kippur?
I don't know about that.
So the question is like this, does it make
He's just
sense?
saying it right
Now, people, the night before people went to bed, they had supper. Moshe was on the mountain, right? They ate supper, it was a regular day.
They didn't know it was Yom
In the morning, they brewed a coffee, and they had a rugula and some coffee, right? Then they had some seltzer from Be'er Mayim. Good.
And they had a good
6 hours in the day, they already had a bagel and lox. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down the mountain, and now it turns out they all sinned already, retroactively. It doesn't make sense.
You saw the mitzvah.
Besides,
no mitzvah of Yom Kippur.
Really, all the commentaries ask, a person really becomes an adult when the body shows signs of being an adult. So what happens if a boy, Yom Kippur comes in at night, he doesn't show the signs of being an adult. All of a sudden, 2 hours into Yom Kippur, or 6 hours, he shows the signs of being an adult, right? He shows the signs of being an adult.
Meaning
Does he have to start? He got married and his wife had a baby. Bonim areim kisimonim. He had a baby. Oh, mazel tov. Oh, it turns out he's a godel, because only an adult can have a child. So now it turns out that he's a godel, right? I'm giving an example. I mean, there's many ways. There's many simonim that show that a person. So now, does it turn out that he has to start
I
fasting?
understand what that means. Only God can have a child.
By definition.
You mean he has two hair?
No, I know
If
that.
a person has a child, that means he's a godel. They're obligated to all the mitzvahs.
That's the way it works.
Even though you didn't have some money.
Man has a son.
No, you didn't show to.
Doesn't matter what he shows or doesn't show. So the question is, now the man had a son or a daughter. So the question is, does he have to start fasting now? So, but that's a very theoretical question, because now we don't have to go into such deep stuff. It's the first Yom Kippur. The holiness. It's like if it now is the holiness of Yom Kippur. Me, you, every Jew is keeping Yom Kippur. Now, all of a sudden, 6 hours into the day, he became an adult. So the question is, does he have to start fasting or not? It's a complicated question. Whatever you're going to say about that question, this one shouldn't be a complicated question. All the Jewish people had supper. Everyone had coffee and danishes for breakfast. The Eibishter now said, Salachti kedvarecha. You know, usually you think of days as a unit. So either this day became holy or it didn't become holy. You know, it doesn't happen like poof, in the middle of the day, there's 6 hours left to the day, and all of a sudden, retroactively, this day became Yom Kippur. In Pshat, maybe on a level of halacha, you could say differently, that year there was no Yom Kippur. That year was no Yom Kippur. It was a regular day. For the following years, that's why that day, they actually brought oilos, zvachim, and they ate and they drank. It was an exciting day. The Eibishter forgave them. Next year, they started fasting on Yom Kippur. From then on, but that year, it doesn't make sense that they kept Yom Kippur on that year, because he only came. It was in that day that the Eibishter said, "Salachti kedvarecha." So the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu did not talk to them about the laws of Yom Kippur does not indicate anything. That's not a proof of anything. We said that maybe, because he didn't talk about the laws of Yom Kippur, then obviously it couldn't have been he was talking to them on Yom Kippur. That can't be the reason. It has to be a different reason. What is a different reason? So the Rebbe says the different reason is simple. And that's why Rashi here talks about two things in the same Rashi. He says Moshe assembled them the second day after the day after Yom Kippur, and then he goes into a whole grammatical thing about Vayakhel Moshe, that Loshen Hifol, he caused them to come. What's the connection here? The connection is like this. Think about it for a moment, says the Rebbe. Moshe comes down from the mountain. He tells the people here that Moshe is coming down with the tablets. Do you think there was one Jew that didn't show up at that moment? Every Jew came out to greet Moshe Rabbeinu. No, they wanted to know. God forgave. What? He comes. Yes. V'salachti kedvarecha. Karan arponav. His face is shining.
They're expecting them.
They're expecting. They're all waiting. The first time they messed up. The third time they didn't mess up. They were presumably all there. So now, what does it mean? Now, what is it? So now you say. So what does it mean? Vayakhel. I would say very good. That's what Vayakhel means. Vayakhel means.
Why do you need it?
No.
They all came.
Oh, 1 second. That's why you would say. You might think that's why it says Vayakhel. He didn't gather them. They gathered on their own.
They want to know the verb.
So because the question, why would he wait till tomorrow? he probably spoke to them today. So logically, you would think that this whole sermon happened on Yom Kippur, A, and also from the words of the pasuk, it says Vayakhel, that they gathered on their own, so it means that he didn't gather. It was on Yom Kippur when they came to the foot of the mountain. That's why Rashi says, no, that is a mistake. That's not what happened. Because if that was the case, it doesn't make sense. The whole story, it says Vayakhel Moshe. Moshe did something. So Moshe did nothing. He just came down from the mountain and the people gathered. Rashi says, no, grammatically it's correct to say, when you say Vayakhel and they came, it means when he calls them, please come.
Vayakhel is active. He's ill in Hebrew.
That's why Rashi, you might make a mistake, and that's why Rashi is explaining that you shouldn't think that it happened on the day of Yom Kippur. It happened the next day. They already went to their tents, and then Moshe Rabbeinu called them. But you might, that's why Rashi's, it's not just, Rashi's thinking that you might make a mistake. Because, logically, why wouldn't he talk to them right away? And also, you might make a mistake grammatically and think, Vayakhel, they came on their own. So when did they come on their own? On Yom Kippur. So he says, no. It was the day after Yom Kippur. And Vayakhel Moshe means that he gathered them. And it says Vayakhel, it came on their own. No, he says grammatically, that's not a problem. That Vayakhel doesn't mean they came on their own. It means that he gathered them. It means he gathered them.
So, but what about the grammar here?
So that's what he's saying. That even though you might think,
what's in Nifil?
that's right. Rashi explains that even though it means hifil, that he caused them to come, but it doesn't mean they came on their own. He caused them to come through calling them to come. So that's why Rashi, we understand that Rashi is trying to explain something. You might think that this whole sermon about building the Mishkan happened on the day of Yom Kippur. A, logically, Ziriza Magdim al-Mitzvahs, why wouldn't he talk to them right away? B, it says Vayakhel, it sounds like they came on their own. So Rashi says, no. Vayakhel means that he called them. Why did he call them? Because it was not the day of Yom Kippur. It was the day after Yom Kippur. Everyone already went home. So Yaakov, Moshe went on the loudspeaker and said, hear ye, everyone please come. And grammatically it's correct to say Vayakhel when you call people. The question still remains, why would he? Why? Because it,
how does he know?
Why? Because otherwise, first of all, grammatically he thinks that that's the correct Vayakhel, even though it means that they came, but it means that's why he brings that ayah from the Targum. That's why he goes out. That's why he brings that ayah from the Targum. Rashi goes out of his way to explain that grammatically this is the right way of saying that he gathered the people. Even though you might think otherwise, Vayakhel means they came on their own. Rashi says no. When you gather people, this is grammatically correct to say Vayakhel.
And how would you say it if they went on by their own? What would be the grammar on that?
I don't know. Could be. Vayayosfu Elav Kol Bnei Levi. Vayayosfu.
Could be. You had the man like this.
Now, the question still remains, why would Moshe Rabbeinu not talk to them on Yom Kippur about building the Mishkan? So for that, Rashi doesn't have to explain. The Rashi relies that one would imagine on his own. That day, he came down from the mountain and he brought the luchas. And he told them that the Eibishter forgive them the sins. They were so excited that you can't do 100 things in one day. You have to focus. That day, they were very busy with learning Torah. They were busy, they were focused on learning Torah. Because they were focused on learning Torah, that's what they were doing that day. That day, on Yom Kippur, they were learning Torah. The next day, there was a new thing. But that day, they were all sitting and learning Torah. The next day, there was something new. The next day, he told them about the action, about building the Mishkan.
Moshe was with them, learning?
That day, he was with them learning Torah.
Was that a Seudah?
And next day, he called them about, now we have to build the Mishkan. When I was a student
why
in the
Masifta. The good news that day.
Oh,
He delayed that. If I have good news, I
want to explain it. I want to explain.
Yeah.
There was a chassid. Many here might remember him. He was mashpia in Kfar Chabad in Israel. His name was Mendel Futafas. This guy was a soldier, top soldier. The guy sat in the gulags in Russia for years, because at the end of the war, he was involved with a project of smuggling Chassidim out of Russia. They had made false passports for them, saying that they were Polish citizens when they weren't. And they got hundreds and hundreds of people out. But he didn't want to leave until he was the captain of the ship. He's gonna be the last one. His wife already left. His children left. His children grew up in London without him.
What year?
20 years. He came out 20 years later. He was nabbed by the KGB, 1948. He came out 68, 69, 70. That's when he came.
They were Hasidim in Russia?
Yes, sure.
I thought the Yiddishkeit was outlawed in Russia. It's not.
Underground.
What do you think? They were busy. So he didn't skip a beat. He came out of jail after almost 20 years. He was right away busy doing his. He was back to stuff. He was right away back to making clandestine chadorim and building mikvahs. He was
in Russia.
fast back at work. He was straight back at work. 20 years almost. The guy was sitting in the gulag.
In his blood.
This guy was. So you think when the guy finally got out of Russia, you think that time to rest. He wasn't a young man. His children all grew up. He missed their weddings, everything. You think that it's time for him. He came here. He was an old man. You think it's time. You think Lubavitch Rebbe would have pity on a guy like this and say,
Take it easy.
take it easy.
How old was he when he came?
He was not a young man. I don't know how old he was.
He came to New York.
He passed away. He was in his 90s.
Here is New York, yeah.
No, but
He came after he left Russia. First thing he came to the Rebbe. He came to his Rebbe. Yeah, after 20 years. The Rebbe sent him right away to Israel with a job. With a job to be mashpia in Kfar Chabad. He used to travel every year. He used to come in the summertime. He used to travel around the United States. He used to collect money, mainly there was several yeshivas in Kfar Chabad. One of them was for children that came out of Russia, and Yeshivas Abukharim, and he was to collect money for that yeshiva. He didn't run the yeshiva. He was actually teaching Chassidus in the yeshiva, but being such a personality, and many people had a heart for Russian Jewry at that time. So when someone who sat in the gulag for 20 years came to you and asked you for a contribution, it was easier to get. This was the real stuff. There was the McCoy. So he would travel all around the United States, and he would collect money. He was the Fabreng. I remember I was then a young student in Detroit in the Masifta. He used to come Shabbos. He used to daven for many hours. And then he used to sit down. He used to take l'chaim. He knew how to take.
The Russian way.
Yeah, the Russian way.
And melts the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
He was in 770? I mean, he was in 77?
Oh yeah, then he used to, after his trip, he used to end up for 6 weeks in 770. Then he used to go back to Israel.
Okay.
Then he used to go back to Israel. He stayed.
We used to water it down in Kfar
He used to water it dodown, yeah. So you got more volume. Why did you water it down?
To learn, I don't know if it was on the orders of this Rebbitzin or not.
He had himself a little room, right? He had a little room in the yeshiva.
No, he lived right across the street.
What was he doing? He was the head of Kfar Chabad. What was his position?
Mashpia.
Of the yeshiva?
Mashpia is
To influence what?
Yeah, to teach, to give guidance and avoid decision.
Mashpeh is like Megayes, no?
Where did he pass away? Here in Eretz Yisrael?
To be a spiritual guidance. Chabad, the most important thing in every community, in every yeshiva, especially, is to have a mashpia, to give guidance and avoid Hashem. And he was his just as the way the Rebbe wanted. We wear these Lubavitch, looking hats. The Rebbe told him to keep wearing he wore at least to wear a hat like a sailor. The old Jewish Russian hats. The Rebbe wanted that he should walk around, that the students should see what a Jew looked, like the old, the old Jew.
Like the Rebbe wore?
No, the Rebbe used to wear the regular fedora hats, but the Rebbe wanted that he should still walk around. There was a few people that Rebbe requested that they shouldn't.
Rabbi Torf.
They should change. No, they should stay with the old.
That way.
Yeah, all right.
Maybe I should buy one too.
No, you wait.
A rabbi in the Chaim Berlin, one of the Rosh Yeshivas, Rabbi Khan, one of the Choshev Rosh Yeshivas, so he told me that he was walking with a Rav Hutner, and they saw two of the old Lubavitch Chassidim, with the sailor hats. So Rav Hutner stopped. There was a few students. He said, "Look at these fellows. you will learn to serve Hashem, you have to learn from these fellows.
Wow.
And coming from Putnam.
All right. So he used to travel around. One of the things that Rebbe wanted he should do, he should keep an eye on Lubavitcher communities, especially if Chas v'Sholom there was any machloikas. It was his job to straighten things out. It was his job to make Sholom bayis, you know. In institutions, if there's it was his job to straighten things out. He was very sweet, subtle, but he knew what he needed to do. So he came to a city, and there was a prominent Chabad shliach there. He was busy. He had institutions. He was busy day and night. So Rabbi Futafas asks him, "Tell me, I didn't notice in the morning that you should sit and learn Chassidus before davening. When do you learn Chassidus?" So he says, "I don't have time. I'm running the entire city. I'm running. I have to collect money. I have to put up a budget." So he says, "How about Shabbos? Shabbos? How you daven for 6 hours on Shabbos?" So he said, "6 halavai for 2 hours of Shabbos." So the Vandal said, "Let me tell you something. There is the big city to conquer, and there's the small city, right?" It says, and Tanya brings from Shlomo Melech that he says there was in Kehelis, there was a city, there was a little city, and then there was a fight over the city, and there was a wise king, and there was the Melech Zoken Uksel, there was a foolish king. There is the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. There's the Ir Ktana. There's the little city. And there's always a fight over the little city. The Yetzer Tov wants that the godly soul should have full control over the city. And then there's another king. There's the animal soul. He wants to have full control over the city. So ultimately the person decides we guard the gates. The gates, what goes into our head, what goes into our eyes, what goes into our ears. We control the city. And we get to decide who controls the city. The animal soul controls the city, or the godly soul controls the city. So said Rabbi Futafas, it seems to me that the big city, you've conquered. You run the city. But what's going to be with your small city? You have to conquer your own little city. So sometimes we're busy conquering the big city. We have to remember that we have to conquer our own little city. You know, we have opinions about all of everything. You know, many of us have opinions about exactly what should go on in Washington and how the deal should be done with Tehran and what should go on in Israel and every treaty, how it should be done. If the world, only we could run the world, everything would be good. We know how to run the entire universe. But then there is the Ir Ktana. We have to know that our main mission is that first we have to run the little city. Then we run the big city. So what happened? Moshe Rabbeinu comes down from the mountain. It's true that it's exciting that now that they're going to build a Mishkan, that's going to be a sign. That's going to be a sign that God fully forgives them. But the question is the focus. Day one on Yom Kippur, the focus was to study the Torah, to be removed from the world. There has to be a time of seclusion, not to conquer the whole big city, to conquer the little city. There was day of Yom Kippur was focused on the luchos, on the Torah. The next day was that lasos, was action, which the Eibush said, what should be the action? The action was next day. The first was the day of seclusion. It was a day focused on Torah. That day was focused, every Jew was totally engrossed in learning Torah. And the next day was how to conquer, because the truth is, when building, the whole idea of building the Mishkan was to make a resting place for God in this world, to bring God into this world. But in order to have the power to do it, to make a dwelling place for the Eibishter, sometimes we have to step back. There's like a step back and a step in, a step back and a step in. Similar, that's why Shabbos comes first. Shabbos is synonymous to Torah. The Rashi says, "Hiktim lahem azhara Shabbos l'tziva malachas hamishkan." That loy mash'ena doichas Shabbos. You should know There's 6 days of the week in the Shabbos. There's 1 day of seclusion. We go away from the world. We focused on meditation. We focus on connecting with Hashem. Then 6 days of the week, we bring Hashem into the world. We build a Mishkan. On Shabbos, we don't build a Mishkan. Mishkan means we're going into the world of action. And we're bringing Hashem into the 6 days in the world of action. Shabbos is not that. Hikdim lahem Shabbos. First comes Shabbos. Shabbos is also synonymous with Torah. Torah and Shabbos, explain the Chassidus, are really very connected. That's why the Talmud says in Masechah Shabbos, L'kula alma b'Shabbos nitna Torah. There's a question exactly which day. It was the 6th day in Sivan or day 7 in Sivan. But the Talmud says, L'kula alma, that day was Shabbos. Why? Because we see from the Shabbos is synonymous with Torah. Torah is that I'm removed from the world. Right now I'm in here, and I'm not in the world. The world doesn't exist. The cell phone doesn't exist. The internet doesn't exist. Instant messaging doesn't exist. Nothing exists. The whole world doesn't exist. I'm now only me and Hashem. Me and the Eibishter. And then, after you have Shabbos, then you could do Malachas HaMishkan. That's back and forth and back and forth. When a person goes out 1 day of Shabbos and connects with the Eibishter, connects in the way of Torah, then he could bring down the Eibishter, Kedusha the Mishkan. Otherwise, you can't. You can't. It's like the Talmud says that a person is not supposed to eat before the Tefillah. Now, we eat before Tefillah for a different reason. The reason we eat in the morning before Tefillah is because if we're not going to eat before Tefillah, instead of praying, we're going to be thinking about our food. Instead of praying with our brain, we'll be with the stomach. So we eat. So we put that aside. So the stomach is not grumbling, and we daven. But in the earlier generations, where people were had more control, and if they were hungry, it wasn't so terrible. It didn't disturb their concentration. It was forbidden to eat before davening. Why was it forbidden to eat before davening? Because the whole idea is that first is Shabbos. First is Tefillah, where we connect to Hashem. After we have Tefillah, then we can eat and bring the holiness into our food. But first we have to have Tefillah. So that's the same thing back to why this happened this way. You might think, that's what Ash is coming to tell us. You might think that Moshe Zriza Magdim al Mitzvahs. Moshe Rabbeinu told him right away the action on Yom Kippur. And also the words, Vayakhel, might sound that way. Rashi says, no, it wasn't on Yom Kippur. It was Lamochris Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, the focus was Torah. Lamochris Yom Kippur, the after Yom Kippur, that was when there was the focus on building the Mishkan. The Eibusha should help that all of us, we should be able to have these two things in our life. We should be able to have those quiet moments of Shabbos where there's nothing exists. Nothing but us and the Eibusha.
What does it say? Kol ha'oseh bo melacha yumat. Which means they force the people to make Shabbat.
One second. The Eibusha should help that the Mitzvah Shem, we should all be able to have Shabbos, and then we should have Sheishes Yomim. We should be able to have the day of Yom Kippur, and then we should be able to have a Shachanti B'toichem. We build a Mishkan and bring the